A new week starts right here, right now, live on the early line on this Monday all across the SportsGrid network. That includes sportsgrid.com/watch, where you can find your favorite destination to consume everything all across the grid. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie right side. We are together here for the next 3 hours up until 11 a.m. Eastern time. DRS has been here a good majority of the past few days on the early line. I appreciate him, Davis Maddock, everybody behind the scenes holding down the fort. We are back. We are ready to go. We are less than a week away from Selection Sunday. At this point next week, Donnie and I might be live in studio together looking at the bracket for the NCAA tournament in 2024. Before we get there, Conference Championship Week officially underway, even at the high major level. We have punched 4 tickets to the big dance this year on the men's side as well. Plenty to go to around the NBA, and with the league year and the National Football League beginning this week, some big news on Sunday as well. All on this Monday, DRS. Glad to be back together here on this Monday on the early line.
And hopefully everybody is catching this show on time here with daylight savings, which was yesterday, and away we go. It was nice to see it's 7 o'clock, light outside my window here in New Jersey at this point here. The boys up there in North Jersey having some fun as well. But also, this is a monster week. Teams are going to make runs here. Automatic bids are going to be stolen in the tournament. I can't wait to see it play out. The best time of year, probably right now, Ben.
Some people might argue, and some people might be my co-host, Donnie Rightside, that Conference Championship Week could rival a week you would see throughout the NCAA tournament. I still go with the round of 64 Thursday and Friday, but a huge week upcoming in college basketball to break down for you. First, we welcome in our SportsGrid radio audience here. Hour number 1 of the opening day of a new week. It's a Monday right here on the early line, Sirius XM channel 159. All of our radio terrestrial affiliates now in the fold as well. He is Donnie. I am Ben. Here was the timeline of a Sunday night. Best Picture at the Oscars goes to Oppenheimer. The Pittsburgh Steelers land themselves a new quarterback. Russell Wilson intends to sign with the Steelers when the league year begins on Wednesday, this upcoming Wednesday, for the veteran minimum, a 1-year deal, $1.2 million. Russ leaves Denver, now headed to the Steel City.
The guy that's probably popping the champagne bottle is not necessarily Russell Wilson for getting roughly $38 million from the Denver Broncos in order to play for free, basically, to the Pittsburgh Steelers. But it's Mike Tomlin. He's not going to pop a champagne bottle on winning a Lombardi. He's going to pop a champagne bottle because he probably just guaranteed another winning season in Pittsburgh. But that's the end of the argument here on that. I don't think that's a Super Bowl organization right now. Did they make themselves better? No. Probably so, because anything, probably an upgrade over Kenny Pickett. But here's the issue, Ben. You're not going to find your franchise guy, your future quarterback, doing it this way here. You'll be on that treadmill once again, just making the playoffs, winning 9 to 10 games, and then trying to find your quarterback here. It's a good move if you want a winning season. It's a bad move for the future for me, for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
10 seasons with the Seattle Seahawks. Russell Wilson was a Pro Bowler in 9 of them. But what is his future now with Pittsburgh after a disastrous 2-year campaign in Denver? We'll break it all down later in this opening hour into hour number 2. The QB news did not stop there on a Sunday earlier in the day. After Baker Mayfield was not placed under the franchise tag by the Buccaneers, Tampa signs him to bring him back. 3-year deal worth $100 million. Baker, on a prove-it season a year ago in Tampa, now gets paid the big bucks by the Bucs.
Yeah, salary cap went up. It's a $100 million contract. You saw the big bonus there. Most people say, wow, he's just your average quarterback in the NFL. That's your average salary now for a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's a new time. It's a new day and age here. And I thought this was probably the worst kept secret. Baker's going to test the free agent waters. Look, we knew that was never going to happen. He was always going to be a Buccaneer. They just couldn't afford, if the negotiations took a little bit too long, Ben, that they would be able to get this one under wraps. It worked out. They got the man they wanted here at a price that was affordable in today's market.
$50 million for Baker Mayfield guaranteed over the first 2 years of his deal. We'll see what his future is in Tampa. Speaking of the state of Florida, Mac Jones, now a new resident of Jacksonville. The Patriots trade the 15th overall pick from the 2021 NFL Draft to the Jaguars for a 6th rounder. Mac Jones's time in New England has officially come to a close.
And for the New England Patriots heading into the draft saying, we're just going to take the best football player available. No, you're not. You're going to take the best quarterback available is what you're supposed to do when you're drafting in the top 3 of a quarterback-rich draft. So the Patriots look like they're going to get their franchise guy in the draft. Mac Jones, supposedly the franchise guy, now moves on to another franchise in Jacksonville.
We'll talk about this later, but 5 quarterbacks were taken in the top 15, those first 15 picks in the 2021 NFL draft. More than likely, only one will start next year on the team that drafted him. That's also in Jacksonville. His name is Trevor Lawrence. Huge weekend in college hoops, including on the women's side. It was Championship Sunday in the SEC, top 10 tilt. Reigning national champs in LSU. South Carolina, top team in the country, looking to stay undefeated. The two teams jawing back and forth all game long. And then in the fourth quarter, a benches clearing brawl that led to Camila Cardoso, the big person for South Carolina, absolutely decking Flau'jae Johnson for LSU. She was ejected. 6 players ejected between the two sides. South Carolina stays unbeaten, 79-72, a perfect 32-0 with an SEC title. But boy, oh boy, were there some festivities yesterday between the Gamecocks and the Bayou Bengals.
Yeah, you usually play 5-on-5, but you have a couple bench players. But this one truly was 5-on-5. It felt like down the stretch because there were no bench players that were available here. And let's also keep in mind, South Carolina is undefeated here. They won the SEC. That's what they're supposed to do. But quite frankly, Ben, they probably should have never even been in the SEC championship game because Tennessee, with the absolute worst defense I've ever seen in my life to end a basketball game, that's another story. But South Carolina rolls on, man. Perfect season, 32-0. Let's see what they do in the tournament now.
And it was Camila Cardoso on Saturday that knocked down the triple to send South Carolina into the championship game. She will be suspended, by the way, for the first game for South Carolina in the NCAA tournament. Probably not a big deal. They'll still win by 30. The Iowa Hawkeyes make it 3 in a row in the Big Ten tournament. Caitlin Clark, after only 4 points in the opening half, ends up with 34 as the Hawkeyes rally from down by as many as 11 in the second half to knock off Nebraska. Caitlin Clark, tremendous. Kate Martin, tremendous as well. Clark scores 34. Iowa makes it 3 in a row in the Big Ten tournament with another title for Caitlin Clark and company.
Wasn't even thinking about this game. Got a little news update in the first half that I was struggling a little bit here, and also Caitlin Clark. So, that'll be interesting here, but never did I thought to even turn the TV on. Stumbled on with about a minute to go, Ben. Enthralled the rest of the way. Watched through overtime. Fantastic stuff. Something just a few short years ago, Ben, I never would have done here. I would have just kept moving the dial. Not this time here. I wanted to see how it finished, and that was an awesome finish in the Big Ten.
Plenty of college basketball news coming your way, but 3 tickets punched on Saturday. Drake, Longwood, and Stetson. Shout out to Jalen Blackman. He had 43 for the Hatters in the A-Sun title to send Stetson to the NCAA tournament. And Scotty Scheffler at the Arnold Palmer Invitational cruises to a victory, 15 under par, 5 shots in front of the rest of the field. Plenty around the NBA association action. Up next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need
Penn
to find
State's
a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But
Right.
if we make them a third,
They get in.
this
is
they're
the Penn
always
State
going to
rule.
be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Live right here on this Monday on the early line. Around the association we go from a 9-game slate on a Sunday in the NBA. Firmly in the home stretch of this NBA campaign. Postseason positioning front and center for those teams still in the running around the association. A West test last night out in Los Angeles between the Lakers and the Minnesota Timberwolves. Of course, the T-Wolves and their future slightly up in the air here down the home stretch. No Karl Anthony Towns last night, no Rudy Gobert, and the Lakers pick up an 11-point victory, 120-109. That was actually the expected outcome, DRS. Los Angeles booked as a 3-point home favorite. They cover the number, winning by 11.
Yeah, this is so many times we talk about the Los Angeles Lakers for myself is if Anthony Davis is going to play close to 40 minutes along with LeBron James down the stretch, you better be stacking up victories here. And that's a quality win. I don't want to hear that Rudy Gobert was out and Karl Anthony Towns is down. Your record is what your record says it is. 44-20 entering into that game for the Timberwolves. So the Los Angeles Lakers probably look at that one and say, oh, we picked one up here heading down the stretch, which means that win might be able to translate into a game in the next week that maybe LeBron James and or Anthony Davis can take on. Because when we talk about moving on up those standings here, you take a look at the Los Angeles Lakers with back-to-back wins and the Golden State Warriors with back-to-back losses now moves the Lakers into that 9 seed here with 10 games back of Oklahoma City, but more importantly, 2 games back of the Phoenix Suns to try to get out of the play-in round. Nice win for the Los Angeles Lakers. In games where you play good opponents who have injuries, just secure that victory here because sometimes it's when you play them, not who you play them at that point, and that was a factor last night. Good win for the Lakers. I'm not going to take anything away from it.
The Lakers have won 5 of their last 7, 3 of those 5 outright as an underdog. Of course, covering last night as a short 3-point favorite. Anthony Davis, with neither Gobert or Cat in his way in the lane, 27 points, 25 rebounds for AD yesterday against Minnesota, 29 points, 9 and 8 for LeBron James, a very LeBron James-esque stat line out of the King. For Minnesota, DRS, they are now a game and a half back of Oklahoma City, a half game behind Denver, who now is in between the Thunder and the T-Wolves for that second spot in the Western Conference. Don't forget, it was Minnesota at the All-Star break just about 2 weeks ago that was in that spot as the 1 seed in the Western Conference, now trailing just a little bit, falling off pace, and without Karl Anthony Towns for a little bit of time. Something to pay attention to, the Timberwolves for most of this season have been the best defensive team or one of the best defensive teams around the NBA. They've now lost 4 of their last 6. They have gone over in 5 of their last 7. Last night's total, 222.5. We stay in LA for the early game on Sunday, the matinee out in Los Angeles between Milwaukee and the Clippers. No Kawhi, no Paul George, no Russell Westbrook for LA, and the Bucks take advantage. 69 combined points between Giannis, who had 34, and Dame, who had 35, as Milwaukee wins by 7, covering by the hook, laying 6.5 on the road in Los Angeles.
Yeah, so Ty Lue after the game sort of complaining about the circumstances that we've all known for, 20, 25 years, however long the Staples Center has been in existence here. The Clippers always get last dibs, which means when the schedules come out, and I believe even the Kings get dibs over the Clippers here, so that's why they play the early game and not the Los Angeles Lakers and vice versa, and you saw that there. One of those quick turnarounds that you had, what's going to happen in that game? Well, probably some of your stars are going to sit. Multiple stars sat for the Los Angeles Clippers here at this point here, so nice win for the Bucks here, and again, it's who you're going to play on the opposite end. The Clippers are a hot team in the NBA. The Bucks need to stack up those victories and continue with Doc Rivers. They got one yesterday, even though only James Harden basically showed up for the Clippers here. They still did play hard, but good win by the Bucks. It's one of those games where you probably thought you'd get a full tilt effort out of the Clippers. Still got to take advantage of it, and they did yesterday, Ben.
Just after 5 in the morning in Los Angeles, but do you hear that? Construction has just picked up a little bit at Intuit Arena, about 15 minutes away from Crypto. So the Clippers can find their new home with the new rebrand for the organization owned by Steve Ballmer. Milwaukee, of course, won their first 6 games following the All-Star break. Now make that 7 of 9. Since the break, the All-Star break bump for the Bucks. Doc Rivers, the head coach of the East. Giannis, the captain. Dame winning the three-point contest and the All-Star game MVP. Milwaukee keeps it rolling in those 7 wins. Since the All-Star break, the Bucks have covered in all 7. The Clips just 5-5 since the All-Star break. No covers in any of the 5 losses. Now, after the New York Knicks held Orlando to only 74 points on Friday, that was the least amount of points scored by any NBA team in a game this year. New York follows suit. They only score 73 last night at home against the Philadelphia 76ers. When the team you're playing against only scores 73, you only need 79 on the other side. DePaul might score more points than both of these teams this week at the Big East tournament inside the Mecca. That the lowest scoring game in the NBA this season. The lowest scoring game in the NBA since 2016, at least the first time neither team reached the 80-point benchmark in nearly a decade. Shout out to Joe Frizo, our producer behind the scenes, the stat man, coming up with that nugget.
Yeah, by the way, shout out to Dante DiVincenzo, who's basically in that YOLO spot right now. He gets unlimited shooting opportunities from three-point range and is building absolute skyscrapers with all the bricks he's had over the past week here. This was a terrible game to watch, but it could be a Picasso here if you're a Philadelphia 76ers backer or fan. You got to get any win you possibly can, whether it's 119-109 or 79-73. Any victory is monstrous as you wait for Maxey and Joel Embiid to come back to the fold here. This game set the NBA back probably 50 years, but the Philadelphia 76ers, I don't care what that looked like. They picked up the victory here. And again, we're waiting. And by the way, when you talk about injuries, we know Joel Embiid is out for a while. We know Max is going to miss a couple games with a concussion. I feel like OG Anunoby were on the cusp, and also Julius Randle on the cusp of coming back for months so far. When are they actually coming back to help the New York Knicks, who dropped that game at home as 7.5-point favorites to the Sixers? That's a bad look for the Knicks, but again, from a Sixers perspective, boy, they love that win because they don't get wins too much now.
Jalen Brunson doing all that he can, but last night, 6 of 22, 1 of 9 from deep. You would think a game that featured a total of 152 points would favor a team coached by Tom Thibodeau. Nope. The Knicks, a 7-point home favorite, lose outright. Donnie, the total last night was 211.5. Yeah, it stayed under. That's a college basketball score, 79-73. Philadelphia, by the way, was 29-13 on January 22nd. Third best record in the Eastern Conference. From that point, they had lost 15 of their last 21. A victory now last night make that 7-15 since January 22nd. They went outright as an underdog. Only 1 cover in those 15 losses, by the way. New York under in 8 of their last 9 games. Kelly Oubre, He scored 18 points to lead Philadelphia, our guy, a double-double in that starting lineup. 10 boards as well. So Orlando only scored 74 on Friday night against New York. They didn't reach 100 on Sunday night against Indiana at home. 97 points only for the Magic. The Pacers actually a short 1.5-point favorite on the road in South Florida. They get the victory 111-97 against Orlando. 222.5 the total. It stays under. DRS, that was the lowest over-under for the Pacers since their second game in the season against Cleveland way back in the middle of November.
Yeah, by the way, you take a look at the standings here in the East, too. You have the Indiana Pacers 14 games back, the Philadelphia 76ers 13.5 games back, and the Orlando Magic 13 games back. So 3 of the 4 teams we just talked about here really jockeying for position right now as we take a look at it, but also for the Pacers' perspective. You like to win games like this, Ben. You don't want to always have to be 150 to 149 and holding on by the edge of your seat. A massive third quarter, which had the Pacers' advantage. 39-21 was the decisive quarter in that basketball game. But anytime you're the Pacers, you'll take it. I'm going to play some defense out here. How about holding Orlando to 25% from three-point range and 37% as a team? That'll pick up victories. That's a big-time win for the Pacers on the road against the Magic.
The Magic, the best cover team in the NBA, but no cover yesterday as a slight home underdog. Now 42-23 against the spread. Tightly compact in the East outside of Boston, who holds an 8-game lead over Milwaukee. Into the zone we go. The college basketball regular season finale up next.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like
This is
the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State
rule. Be better than the West half.
Yep.
That 1 year that lightning in a bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
live right here on this Monday on the early line on SportsGrid. A huge weekend in men's college basketball because for some at the high major level, it was the end of a regular season, outright regular season crowns on the line in league play to set the stage for conference championship week that is forthcoming and how those seed lines would look for conference tournaments and maybe even the eventual big dance and 4 tickets to the NCAA tournament in 2024 at stake over the weekend. Over the past 48 hours, those 4 berths have now been taken to the NCAA tournament as well. We enter the zone to look back on it all. This is March. How do you want to end a regular season in ACC action with a conference crown on the line? That would be down Tobacco Road, inside Cameron Indoor, the Crazies of Duke and the Tar Heel Blue of North Carolina. UNC, booked as a 4.5-point road underdog, walks into Durham and comes out with a 5-point victory in its first ACC regular season title since 2017. 84-79 in a game that had a little bit of everything between these two rivals. Again, North Carolina wins outright as a 4.5-point dog. Total of 150 and a hook goes over.
And taking a look at the ACC, the championship was on the line. You knew coming in here the North Carolina Tar Heels were going to raise a banner, at least as co-champions here. But nobody wants to be a co-champion and have a chance to win the outright against your rival Duke 8 miles away here. And they handled their business. On Friday, breaking this game down, Ben, both myself and Davis Maddock, I said to myself, Carolina Tar Heels just a better basketball team and getting points in this game. Sign me up on this edge, because the one thing we know about North Carolina and also Duke, this is an ACC that's been down this year. These two are clearly the leads in the ACC. Now, granted, as we look at the rankings that'll be out shortly, they're both top 10 teams as for now. But I'm not looking for these teams, I should say, towards March Madness, as I say to myself, do I think either one of these teams can make a March Madness run and cut down the nets? I don't think that's possible. But between these two, when they play each other, you throw the records out in the books. And Duke desperately wanted to win that game on their home court to end the season and get momentum. They weren't able to do that. Why? Efficiency from the three-point range. It wasn't Duke. It was Carolina. 7 of 15 here. That's what got it done. Love the performance by the Tar Heels, but I got to say this. I expected the Tar Heels to win this game, Ben.
7 of those threes made by the Notre Dame transfer Cormac Ryan, a career-high 31 points. He was 6 of 8 from deep, and he was letting the Crazies inside Cameron know all about it. I think the real MVP of this season and this game, the medical staff at Duke University, to make sure that Kyle Filipowski's right leg was in good enough shape that he could trip Harrison Ingram from North Carolina. He denied the tripping after the game, but Flip, we got cameras all over the stadium, my brother. It looks as though it was pretty flagrant. Something about those Duke Blue Devils and sticking out a leg. And then we got to the end of the game where the Cameron Crazies were chucking water onto the floor while John Shire is apologizing for the poor performance on one side. And North Carolina is chirping the student section. Some may say it's too much or blah, blah, blah. That's college basketball. That's the best rivalry in the sport. Appreciate it. Both Duke and North Carolina, of course, will enter the NCAA tournament as high seeds. UNC, first regular season conference crown in 7 years. They'll be the top seed in the ACC tournament this weekend. Duke, that number 2 seed. Houston, in its first year in the Big 12, the champions of the Big 12. DRS, after dropping 2 of their first 3 games in this league, and both you and I uttered, Houston, this ain't the American any longer. Boy, were we a little bit short-sighted in that one. Houston ends the year winners of 9 straight to win its first ever Big 12 title in the best league in college basketball in its first year in said league with a dominant 30-point win at home over a top 15 Kansas team on Saturday afternoon. The Cougs cover as a 7.5-point home favorite.
7.5, too many points here. That game was 40-21 at the break, and away Houston went here. And the interesting part about this game, too, is sometimes you don't really know which teams are going to show up on the last game of the season. Because you know the Kansas Jayhawks, like, okay, well, we know we're in the tournament here. Yes, would we love to beat Houston in their own building? But the emotions that Houston was going to have, like that senior night atmosphere, as well as we win this, we clinch full right outright here of the Big 12 championship for the regular season. And they did that going away in spades. This is the dangerous team when we take a look at this Houston squad, where throughout the season, you're right, Ben, they open up the season, hey, get a victory here, but then drop a couple games here in the Big 12. We say, like, oh, okay, now you're going to be in a real conference. And boy, they hit the gas pedal after those early losses in conference play. Clearly, far and away, the best team in this conference. But I didn't expect this. I thought Houston was going to win this game. Never did I think they would wipe the floor with Kansas by 30 points. And also, very un-Kansas-like here, Ben. 10-8 in Big 12 play here as they move forward. Now they're in the top 30, odds-wise, 35, 30-1 in that range here. Yeah. I'm not looking for Kansas here, even though they're a top 15 program in the country. But this is one of those things where sometimes you ramp up and you say to yourself, on that top line, who did you want? UConn, Houston, Purdue. These are the ones that might sway here by going, man, if Houston puts it together and can play like this, nobody's touching them in the tournament. We just have to see if they can. Massive win and a statement game for the Houston Cougars at home.
Still one of the 20 best prices for KU to win a national championship, but it has dropped back to 45-1 now for Bill Self's Jayhawks. And part of that is probably because Hunter Dickinson, the big man, the transfer from Michigan, left the game in the second half with an apparent shoulder injury. Kevin McCullough Jr., probably the second best player for KU this year, has been banged up down the stretch, and it was not a kind stretch to Kansas. They dropped 5 of their final 9 games in the regular season. When's the last time we saw Kansas as a 6 seed in the Big 12 tournament? That's where the Jayhawks will enter. They will get underway in the Big 12 tourney in Kansas City on Wednesday. Big 12 tournament starts tomorrow on a Tuesday in KC. Now to how the SEC was won as well. Kentucky and Tennessee. Tennessee had already won the SEC on Wednesday evening. They were at home on Rocky Top against a streaky Kentucky team, and the Cats will end the year on a very positive streak. In fact, a 5-game win streak, snapping Tennessee's 7-game win streak to end out the regular season. Another road win for John Calipari and his Wildcats, 85-81. Kentucky wins outright as an 8.5-point underdog despite 166 combined points. Total stays under 167.5.
Yeah, Kentucky's for real. And also, yes, it's not the same as, like, again, the NFL is like, okay, we already clinched. Let's take off at home here on senior night, or senior day, I should say, in Tennessee. And also, when we're just reading those box scores before the game, say, you know what? I'm not going to tell you who won this game, but I'm going to let you know. Connect played 36 minutes, shot 29 times, made 14 of those, which included 6 of 15 from three-point range and 6 for 9 from the free throw line. Scored 40 points in that game. It's, they signed me up. Tennessee was probably a runaway victor here, but that's not the case. This is why Kentucky is so intriguing. Most of the time, Ben, you'll see a starting 5 absolutely go off on a great college basketball team, because that's what happens here. You take a look at Tennessee, right? Off the bench, 1 point, 2 points, 2 points here. They got 5 total bench points here. Flip it over to Kentucky, 27 points out of Shepherd, 11 points out of Dillingham. Like, if you're getting around 50 points off of your bench, you're going to win so many games, because that means you have depth and talent. It's like, oh no, we got in foul trouble. If you can bring a guy off the bench like Shepherd, who's been doing this all season long along with Dillingham, it's fantastic to watch. It's why Kentucky is so dangerous here. And that was a really good win. Even though, as you said, Tennessee had already had the SEC wrapped up. Tennessee wasn't laying down in that basketball game as a top 5 program. Kentucky went in and took that game. Fantastic stuff.
If you bet the under 33-29 at the break, Kentucky was up, you're like, fantastic. 104 points in the second half, 52 on either side. That is the question for Kentucky. Can they defend to make a deep run in the NCAA tournament? They haven't reached a Final Four in quite a long time by Lexington standards. But Reed Shepherd has been fantastic. The Kentucky kid, 27 points. Dalton Knecht, the best bucket getter in my estimation in all of the country, 40 points to lead Tennessee. Now some other weekend spots. UConn, despite trailing Providence early, goes into Friartown and wins by 14, 74-60, covering as a 9-point favorite. Winners of 4 straight to end the regular season. They will be that top overall seed inside Madison Square Garden this week in the Big East tournament. Purdue, the same case in the Big Ten. Don't cover as a double-digit home favorite on Senior Day in Mackey against Wisconsin, but still Purdue ends the year atop the Big Ten for a second consecutive season. Then a shocker in Pac-12 country. USC wins outright at home against Arizona by 13 points. DRS, the Trojans, a 7.5-point underdog winning outright. SC this year, high expectation. They fall short, just 8-12 in the Pac-12, losing record overall, 14-17 this year. But the Trojans have won 4 of their last 5 entering the Pac-12 tourney. Keep an eye on USC.
Yeah, playing good at the right time here. And also, they have the superstar talent. They have the NBA talent to move forward. And also, you know what I like about this too, Ben? You always know I love to get to the box score. Like, Boogie Ellis plays 30 minutes and scores 5 points. They still won that basketball game against a top 5 team in Arizona. Now, yes, Arizona had everything wrapped up. But you have to understand this. These guys don't just say, okay, look, we can afford losses here to opponents that we're supposed to beat. Everybody is still fighting for that one line here, which is in play for a lot of these teams. So teams like Tennessee and Arizona, not just giving up on the final game. It's not that big of a deal. That could be the difference of a 1 seed and a 2 seed here, which is massive come tournament time here. That's a great win by USC, who I profited off of just a few weeks ago when I thought they now had some advantages here with their young players. Now, we'll see moving forward if USC can make a run in the Pac-12 tournament. I don't think it's going to happen, but would it be all that much of a surprise with the talent they have? Not really.
I think that keeps Zona completely out of consideration of the one line for the NCAA tournament. I would look at North Carolina right now as that 4th and final 1 seed. Plenty more around college basketball coming your way next.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the Book.
The Brooks are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Letting points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats in fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the rim.
All I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart Team.
Winning back-to-back road games.
I don't care if they're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to the early line on this Monday. So the regular season finale weekend at the high major level in college basketball. Now it is postseason play for everybody. All 362 D1 schools now into the postseason. Some have already been eliminated from conference tournament action. And 4 teams have already punched their ticket to the big dance, that 2024 men's NCAA tournament. On Saturday, the first ticket punched out of the Ohio Valley, Morehead State. They were the favorites entering the OVC tournament, an even money plus 100 number. We will get to Drake in just a moment. Stetson, third best price out of the A-Sun. They go to the big dance at a 5-1 price. As we shared, Jalen Blackman, 43 points yesterday for the Hatters against Austin Peay to send Stetson to its first ever NCAA tournament. Longwood and Morehead State, 2 of the 4 tickets punched as Longwood out of the Big South, a 12-1 number, 5th shortest into the big dance, and into the Missouri Valley we go. Arch Madness is one of the best tournaments each and every year, and that MVC tournament title game yesterday, middle of your afternoon on CBS. Kevin Harlan on the call, the 1 seed Indiana State led by Robbie Avila, and the other side, number 2 Drake, led by the coach's kid, Tucker DeVries. They did not disappoint. Drake wins 84-80 outright as a 3-point underdog. DRS, they led by as many as 18 points before Indiana State. The Sycamores rallied, but at the end, it was Tucker DeVries, 27 points to lead Drake to its second consecutive Missouri Valley title and their second consecutive appearance in the NCAA tournament.
And if you're just taking a look from Drake's perspective, you're on a neutral court here, and you feel bad for Indiana State because it probably looks like they're going to be left out here when, quite frankly, I do believe they're deserving to get into the big dance. But if we're just being honest, you got to play a little bit of defense here. 52% from the field, from the floor here for the Drake Bulldogs, but more importantly, 11 of 18 from three-point range. You saw that early. But you can't get down that much, and I love the comeback here, but that takes so much energy out just to get back into the basketball game. Drake was the better team for the majority of the game here. Indiana State, crashed there. But you would take a look, and this is what I always like to bring up too. The regular season play here, both of these teams were awesome in conference play. 17-3 overall for Indiana State, 16-4 for Drake. So you can't, it's not really one of those, major upset here where Drake really didn't play that well during the regular season. Both of these teams deserving to go into March Madness, but also takes a little bit out of it. Like Indiana State had the better regular season record in conference play and won it, but you get usurped by a 4 or 5 day tournament where maybe somebody gets hot and wins here. Both of those teams should be deserving to go, but usually we know how that turns out. You'll get a team that's 500 in the Big 10 or the Big 12 or the ACC getting the tip over Indiana State when maybe we'd have more fun watching Indiana State at this point. But an unbelievable finish to a great tournament that seemingly never fails to, give us something that we can't talk about the very next day. I love the MVC, and they showed out yesterday in a big way.
The Bulldogs had the second best price as the 2 seed entering the Missouri Valley Conference tournament and Arch Madness, plus 220, only behind the Sycamores of Indiana State. Now, it's very interesting. Had Indiana State actually won yesterday, Drake probably has a better resume for at-large contention. That was their 4th quad 1 win yesterday for Drake this year. Indiana State only has 1. Now, that's the very interesting thing for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to consider. It will be a very nervy week in Terre Haute for Indiana State in terms of waiting to see if they earn an at-large bid to the NCAA Tournament. One of the 30 best rankings in the net yesterday for the Sycamores, but they only have 1 quad 1 victory this season. How does the committee look at the metrics based on what we see in terms of overall record and output and just the quality of a basketball team. I believe Indiana State deserves to be into the big dance. I believe that mid-major teams deserve more opportunities than the team that gets to fluff up its net rankings because it plays in the Big 12 or the Big 10 and the SEC and finishes 9th out of the 14 teams in that conference. It is a very big moment for the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee to make that standard. If you look at metrics, Indiana State's resume doesn't really match even that of the 8th team out of the Big 10. But if you look with your true eyeballs for the quality of the sport and a Cinderella run in March Madness, which is what we love out of the NCAA tournament, Indiana State should be in the big dance. I hope the selection committee follows.
No, and you're right about that, too, because sometimes you take a look at, well, nobody's ever heard of these teams. One of the biggest internet sensations this year and so much fun and probably showed up even last week even more was Robbie Avila. 35 minutes yesterday, only 15 points, but he's a guy that you would love to say, man, if this team can make it through, Ben, the round of 64 and the round of 32, this team would be a superstar just based on him alone moving forward. But we know how this works out, and they'll tell you every step of the way, we only go by what's on the paper here and what makes some sense. But let's just equate a team like middle of the run team, Michigan State, right, with Tom Izzo. They got superstar power. They'll get the nod over Indiana State, even if there's any part of it's a coin flip. Both of the metrics are the same. We know Michigan State is moving forward in the Power 5 conference here with Tom Izzo because they've won championships before. But this is what we talk about. There's enough food at the table. And some people even try to equate about Donnie. It's not the same argument when you take a look at college football expanding, where why don't you want Liberty to get in? It's not the same thing. There's 68 teams that get in. You're talking about teams that are deserving, senior-laden, fun. And then also, this isn't like, hey, well, it's an automatic bid. You know, they only won 13 games and lost 33 games on the season. Like, no, this is a great team that won its regular season, went to the final, was tied up in the final minute, and you're going to tell me they're not good enough to get in the top 68? Stop it, man. Indiana State should be in, so should Drake here. This is what we always preach every year. These are the teams that actually can win basketball games, 1 and 2 games here to advance to the Sweet 16. I agree with you here. I would love to see Indiana State in.
Robbie Avila is an internet sensation, but he's also a hooper. And if the NCAA Tournament Selection Committee denies us the chance to make him an international superstar over a 2-week run in March, I think I will never be able to forgive that selection committee. And I'll just say this. Indiana State, who still ranks 29th in the net, they were 26th entering yesterday's MVC tournament title game. They have 9 road wins this year. Alongside St. Mary's, that is the most for any team in the top 45 of the net. You want to see a team that can go away from the friendly confines like it will be in the NCAA tournament and win big basketball games. That is the Sycamores. Let them dance. That is my plea. Now we look around the country at the end of the regular season. Some conference tournaments have already come to a close. Everywhere else, it is conference championship week in college basketball. The reigning national champs, the Connecticut Huskies, will enter the postseason as the favorites to make it 2 straight titles. Plus 480 for UConn, nearly $2 in front of Houston, who now separates slightly by 50 cents in front of Purdue, a 7-1 number on the Boilermakers. But DRS, you see it from the odds there. You might not hear about dominant teams this year, malarkey. Those top 3 teams, UConn, Houston, Purdue, have been the top 3 teams all year long in college basketball.
And correct. And you're taking a look at their conferences individually, Ben. It's been Connecticut the entire season in the Big East. It's been Houston outside of that first weekend opening here in the Big 12. They've been the dominant program, and, of course, the Purdue Boilermakers. So that's what we talk about, that top shelf line, Connecticut, Houston, and Purdue. Even if you're saying to yourself, who do you trust more? We know if Houston doesn't bring their A game on offense, they can absolutely crack down on defense. Connecticut here has the heartbeat of an NCAA champion. Why? Because they just won it last year and returned a couple starters back. They know how to get it done, including their head coach. And also Purdue, 7-1 price here. You might not be trusting them based on 2 out of the past 3 years, but what have they shown you this year that's going to say, oh, you know what? Same always here. It's Purdue. Like, no, this is a new version of a Purdue team with a better backcourt and, quite frankly, the best version you're going to get of Zach Edey, which is even better to me, Ben, than when he won the Naismith last year. He's been tremendous this year. I agree wholeheartedly with the way we're being priced with the top 3 programs right now, because, quite frankly, I would be shocked if these 3 teams don't reach the Final Four. I would be.
And here's the very interesting thing. We have said this all along for the final 2 weeks of the regular season. Is this now the moment, with the regular season done and finished, to look at your NCAA tournament prices? I would still say hold, wait to see what happens in conference championship week, unless you think there is a team with value currently that is on the uptick. But those three short numbers, UConn, Houston, Purdue, I don't think they're going to get much longer. Maybe if somebody is bounced in the quarters of their respective conference tournament. But outside of that, and even if that happens, you're not going to find a ton of value. I would wait until this point on Monday, or maybe right after Sunday, and the NCAA tournament field of 68 is revealed on our Selection Sunday show. We will mark the movement of where those numbers were entering Selection Sunday and where they were after, because coaches around the country will tell you, seed line be damned. It doesn't matter if we're a 1 seed. If the 8 seed in our region is the sneakiest team in college basketball, we'd rather be a 2 to take on the winner of the 7-10 matchup, who either of those teams stink. That is the interesting thing. Your path to a Final Four might be more representative of what the value looks like from the national championship odds, instead of where you rank in the AP poll or where you sit on those seed lines.
Absolutely. And also take a look at, we're sitting here Monday. This is before conference tournaments play kicks underway for the Power 5 conferences, right? The high majors. You take a look at Tennessee, who opened up today as we were going over the show at a 10-1 price. They just dropped back to here a 12-1 price. So these numbers are on the move. And also teams like Kentucky, which were so sneaky a week and a half ago, 40-1, they've now improved all the way down to 23-1 at this point. You're going to get a lot of movement, but Ben and I have been preaching here. These numbers are going to change. Are you upset? Like, I can't bet Connecticut now, Ben. They were 5-1 a couple days ago. Now they're a plus 480 price. You know, I'm telling you, what I'm rooting for here again is like teams like Kentucky, who I want to bet at 23-1. What happens if they run the table here and win the SEC tournament? They're going to drop to like 15-1. Like, what happened? I could have got it at 40-1, understandably, but there's so much more to happen here. And also, you're right. When you and Coach do that show on Selection Sunday night here, when you see those matchups finally coming through, that's when these numbers will start to kick it in, because that's when it gets real. We have and granted, you take a look at the FanDuel Sportsbook, they already have an idea due to things like bracketology of who's going to wind up where. That's where we're seeing it. So they're anticipating a seed drop for a team or two. Like, ooh, you might want to buy that 8-9, as you said, that matchup here that's going to come through. But once we get that clear picture, you'll be able to fire away. So as you said, hold on to betting those tickets here, because you might love somebody Sunday night that maybe you didn't on Saturday night. It's going to be great.
Plenty more coming around the men's NCAA tournament and conference championship week. After the end of the regular season, it was conference championship week at the high major level in women's college hoops. Number 1, South Carolina remains unbeaten, but what a game it was against the reigning champs in LSU, the number 8 team in the country. South Carolina remains undefeated, 32-0. Camila Cardoso, one of their stars down low, will miss the opening game of the Big Dance after being involved and ejected in the scuffle yesterday between the Gamecocks and the Bayou Bengals. Iowa probably earns a 1 seed as well, with its 3rd consecutive Big Ten title, coming back against Nebraska, down by as many as 11 early in the second half, 94-89 in overtime. USC victorious in the Pac-12. Notre Dame makes a run through the ACC as well. So here are the odds quickly for the NCAA women's tournament in 2024. The perfect South Carolina Gamecocks, -115. LSU, +550. Shout out Kate Martin, tied for the second best price alongside the Bayou Bengals, +550 for Iowa. More NFL news now on the Early Line.
The Bostonian versus the book.
In the Big Ten, it's the same thing. No offense to you guys. This feels like the Penn State rule. This feels like this is the guaranteed Penn State to get in.
We need to find a way to let them in because they can't beat Michigan. They can't beat Ohio State. But if we make them a third,
they get in.
Third,
this is the Penn State rule.
Be better than the West half.
Yep.
And that 1 year that Lightning in a Bottle catches on the West half, we'll let them in too because they'll bring people.
The Bostonian versus the book.
The books are treating the Celtics 4 points better at minimum than maybe every single team in the NBA. And so far, I believe they've covered every game since the break.
The Celtics' strict goal here, anything less than a finals appearance and a finals championship is going to be a failure for the Celtics. They got all the pressure in the world across the board here.
Game time decisions only on SportsGrid.
Laying points on the road in college basketball is an absolute landmine. I would not do it. I won't do it the rest of the year. I'm done doing that because it just consistently loses.
I mean, 3 possessions in a 9-point game in which the opposition now is the clock, not the actual team you're facing, right?
Right.
And these guys are taking up shots. I mean, it's just like, that's why it's the NBA.
In-game live, prime time, only on SportsGrid. SportsGrid, your 24/7 sports wagering network. Pro League Soccer, powered by Marca.
I would be willing to bet the under 2.5 goals.
Fantasy sports today.
Especially in head-to-head formats and fantasy, I think I'm going to go with Juan Soto.
Game time decisions.
People don't like it. I don't really care. I cannot believe anybody is betting the Clippers at this number.
Betting above the
All
rim.
I've heard you say on the network is you're either winning or you're rebuilding.
In-game live, all access.
Nobody has been more profitable as a dog than Shaka Smart team.
Winning back-to-back road games. I don't care if you're playing Topeka High. I wouldn't give them any chance whatsoever.
In-game live, prime time.
Back-to-back, just utterly stinker quarters.
In-game live, overtime.
Honestly, as you sit here and listen, watch right now, you may want to consider placing that bet.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
A Monday live right here on the early line on SportsGrid. We end out this opening hour. A little bit rusty. Only one show for me in the last 6 days. I am Ben Stevens. He is Donnie Rightside. Oscars Sunday, and then right after that, maybe as you were watching Christopher Nolan stroll up to the stage, winning Best Director and Best Picture with Oppenheimer, Russell Wilson has made his plans known for his future home around the National Football League. After a disastrous 2-year stint in Denver, Russ intends to sign with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Noon Eastern today, DRS. You can start to reach out to teams. Teams can contact individuals around the National Football League. I guess Pittsburgh was a little bit early there. The league year around the National Football League starts on Wednesday. That's when you can actually sign the dotted line and those new deals. But Russell Wilson aims to play for the Steelers in 2024. A good move for Russ, a good move for Pittsburgh, a win-win on both sides. How does Donnie feel about it?
Yeah, and by the way, on that, Russ is a veteran that was cut, so technically he was free to really sign immediately for that. He didn't have to wait for that tampering period to start up. But also, let's take a look at Russ, and let's be honest if we're the Pittsburgh Steelers organization. Shout out them, Ben, for saying to themselves, you know what? We're going to bring in quarterback competition. They just signed their starting quarterback. Can we be honest with that? Like, if I'm Kenny Pickett, my agent, I'm looking for any way to get out of town somehow just to save face and say, you know what? I just think it's better. They released me. I could find a new team at this point. There's no way, shape, or form. You just signed Russ to be a backup quarterback on the Pittsburgh Steelers, which means Kenny Pickett's first game that he would be the starter goes 0 for 2 and they punt. If they're going 3 and out to start the season, the cat calls start coming down to put Russell Wilson in. Let's be honest with ourselves, Pittsburgh Steelers. You just signed your starting quarterback in Russell Wilson. There is no competition. I don't care what you say.
We have plenty more reaction to start off hour number 2. But if Kenny Pickett, when healthy, cannot beat out Mason Rudolph to start an NFL playoff game. He is not going to beat out Russell Wilson, even the ghost of Russell Wilson, to start next year for the Steelers. We'll continue the conversation. Hour 2 in less than a minute.